The 48th EBERSPA FIL Luge World Cup season continues now from Oberhof, Germany. It's event number 7 and the last of all of the events in Europe prior to the World Championships and then the final 2 World Cups to be scheduled for Asia next month. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. This is stop number 2 of this season in the central region of Germany, the state of Thuringia, the town of Oberhof. It's a great winter sports resort town, which has produced so many great Olympic athletes, not just in the sports of luge, but as well in bobsled, skeleton, biathlon. Oberhof has hosted many world championships. The most recent right here in 2023. It's also good for its French fries, its brats, its glühwein, and its luge spectators who have come from all over the region to check out the action. We start things today with men's singles, and then for the second time this season, in fact, for the second time ever on the World Cup, we'll have the mixed singles and mixed doubles events to conclude the action. 19 nations on hand, and you know what? These athletes represent all of the continents except one, the only continent not represented in this weekend's action, Africa. Everyone else, including the Americans you see there, Team Sweden, who will lead things off here in men's singles. And maybe the most important athlete on hand this weekend in Oberhof is my guest commentator, joining me for the second time this season from Team USA, Summer Britcher. Summer, welcome back to the microphone.
Thanks, Tim. It's so great to be here in the booth again. I have a fantastic view of all the fans at the finish here, ready to cheer the athletes on as they cross the finish line.
Well, you've had a couple of weeks to spend in Oberhof this season, as you did, of course, last season. And at least as far as yesterday's racing, which you took part, what was the general vibe in terms of condition, the track, the attitude of the athletes?
So we've actually been pretty unlucky with some warm, rainy weather here in Oberhof, but I was amazed at the conditions of the track. We had a lot of track records yesterday. So to have track records when you're dealing with warm, rainy conditions, it's a true testament to the effort the crew is putting in on the track, and just the quality of the ice was astounding, and I'm hoping we can see some more track records here in this men's field.
It's a crew that has been on hand here in Oberhof for years and years. Track chief Rolf Heiderbluth and the Ice Meister, as they call him here in Europe, Andre Becker. I think in all 3 races, right, Summer, there were track records?
I believe so. I was mainly paying attention to my own race yesterday. I kind of get in the zone, but I think you're correct, and there were track records in all 3 races. And
Selina Egla and Laura Kipp of Austria won the opening race with a track record for Team Austria. And then in race number 2, it was also Austria and Madeline Egla with a track record. And then famously and dominatingly, the Tobys, Toby Wendell and Toby Alt, won, setting a start record and a track record.
That's
in
right.
The men's doubles.
I believe Madeline Egel also set a track record, and I think a start record, and I think there was a start record for women's doubles as well. So records all around yesterday on this ice here.
Why does that happen, Summer? I mean, there are very few tracks now where any record is more. I know in some cases they've redesigned a track so the record won't be that old, but it's amazing, isn't it? And
they did redesign the track here, I think 3 years ago, maybe. We saw in the aerial shot the beautiful view of the track here in Oberhof. They did some amazing woodwork to continue working on the insulation on the curves. Actually, they added a lot of layers that will help the quality of the ice, as well as some reshaping of the curves. So we do have our track records only go back a few years to those renovations here, but we've seen a lot this season. Last year was sort of the year of terrible weather and really slow races, and this year we haven't necessarily had the best weather conditions, but we've seen some phenomenal ice conditions, and it's been really a great season to be a part of.
You're looking at Max Langenhahn, who sits atop the World Cup standings along with Jonas Mueller right there. Jonas won last week as he greets his good friend, everyone's good friend, Leon Felderer. But Max Langenhahn and Nico Gleicher are tied to the point atop the World Cup standings. Last year at this time, Max nearly had it wrapped up. Now he is in a fight in his attempt to defend the title. So we'll take a closer look at the players in a moment, but now we'll take a look at the venue as we hone on in on this track in Oberhof. We'll get a little 3D view of it first, Summer, and then we'll let you give us a POV tour from top to bottom. But the specs on it, from the men's start, it's just over 1,000 meters, I believe 1,065 meters. And as you see, 14 curves, is it? 15 curves. 14.
14
Maybe
and then a braking curve.
Okay, there you go.
The timing system will end out of the Kreisel.
And that will be in play, though, later today, right?
The straightaway out of Kreisel will be in play, but the touchpad for the mixed events is before the braking curve, curve 15.
Okay, well, now everyone's going to get a look of what we're talking about if we've confused you now, because here we go from the top.
Here we go, and spectators might notice something a little bit different about this track, which is it is just a luge track. That ramp went straight into the first curve, no strange angles, no meeting up with a bobsled ramp. This is the one track in a world. It is luge specific. All the other tracks are 3-sport combined. So that leads to really a lot of fun sliding. If you can embrace the track here, it has its challenges, but the transitions are built for us. The curves swing you from one into another. It's really important to get height here in a lot of curves to build that momentum and that speed through the transitions. This curve here, 13, is one of the last curves, high pressure into a long straightaway where it's super important to be aerodynamic, and then a high pressure Kreisel here into the finish. And over this bump here is where later today you'll see the touchpad.
And we were talking earlier about track records. The track record was set by Johannes Ludwig in 2022, which probably had to be just after they completed the reconstruction. Conditions here, it has rained quite a bit since yesterday's racing, so as you can see in the distance, things are a lot less whiter than they were at this time yesterday. It's a little bit warmer, at least at the same time of day as it was yesterday as well. But as Summer mentioned, the track workers did such a great job yesterday to keep the condition good, even when the temperature was going up close to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 9 degrees Celsius. And there's that Ludwig track record, the start record set by last week's winner, Jonas Müller, and it was set last month right here at the first of 2 World Cups. So they'll open things up with the top 5 who qualified yesterday, or on Friday rather, in Nations Cup. 30 are in total in the field, including 4 Austrians, all of whom have not only won races on their own, but twice this year, Summer, including last time we were in Oberhof, the Austrian men went first, second, third, fourth. It does seem like the Germans have caught up a little in the last few weeks, doesn't it?
I think so. I think that was quite a shocking result. The Austrians have been really showing a lot of strength and depth of field for several years now. But to see, I mean, this is considered the German track, the German luge track. So to see another country go 1 through 4 was a very shocking result. And I think the Germans really kind of got to work there and said, we're not going to let that happen again. So it'll be very interesting to see what changes they've made and how they can pull that off today.
Yeah, that's no question about it. They sort of dragged into the Christmas break hanging their head based on what we saw in the first half of the season. But as far as yesterday was concerned, all of the podiums went to just those 2 nations, Austria and Germany, in the 3 races. Although, of course, during the course of the season, we have seen podiums as well from Italy, Latvia, and the United States. So we get ready with our first competitor of the day. From Team Slovakia, Josef Ninnis. He leads the Nations Cup standings, which I've said often can sometimes be a bit of a dubious distinction because, of course, you want to be in the seeded group, which Josef has been many times during his long career.
That's right. And he's not known for a particularly fast start, but he's such an experienced slider. When the track is long enough or the ramp is steep enough, he's got a shot to really get ahead of some of the athletes who have faster starts than him. Talking with some of the athletes competing today earlier, I heard the ramp here, it's not that the start isn't so important, but it's really important to settle before the curve. And it's such a short ramp, there's not much time to get settled and into the sled before the curve starts, but that is one of the keys here.
4 paddles for Ninnis, and as Summer mentioned, the very quick settle.
if we're making bets on luge, it's an easy bet to say Ninnis is going to look very comfortable on the sled. He's the most experienced athlete on tour. He knows what he's doing here.
That small group of athletes. It's just
rough transition off of curve 11 there.
Slight correction into 14, right?
A little bit of a correction there. Through the long straightaway, 13 to 14 this week, something viewers can watch for is how rounded the bottom of the walls are where it meets the track. That can lead to a lot of easier saves when you have that radius built up. So when you see a sled come over and almost hit the wall, and instead of hitting the wall and what we call ping-ponging, when you hit multiple walls in a row and kind of ruin your race, you'll see the sled steel kind of run up on that radius and then just shift away gently.
43.409 for a man whose Olympic career dates back to the last Italian Olympics in 2006. That's how long Ninnis has been around. Well, the United States is coming off of perhaps its poorest showing of the season or in many years in men's singles, so they'll be looking to atone a little bit here. Both Tucker West and Johnny Gustafson have been relegated to the qualifying group, and Tucker finished fourth in that race on Friday.
It looks like it's started raining quite a bit there at the top of the track, so normally being in Nations Cup is a little bit of extra stress, but it might be a nice benefit for these 5 athletes that get to go ahead of the seeded group, having this wonderful ice to start the race with.
We saw that a lot last year.
Ooh, very high on the end of curve 9, but it gave him some swing into curve 10. And you can see sort of the edges there that I'm talking about of the walls in the straightaway there, where they're very round. They're not very square. Really simple words to describe it there.
West had a typical Tucker fast start time. He holds a couple of start records around the world. He did give up time to Ninnis for most of the bottom half of the track, but hangs on to a 1/100th of a second lead over the Slovakian.
So he's high in the end of the curve here, sort of slaps off a little skid into curve 10. He handles it very well, but that is costing a little bit of time there because you want to be high in those curves and swing from curve to curve, but in a way that is really smooth and builds speed instead of costing you momentum with small skids.
Love the fist bumps. That's a tradition here, Summer, in Oberhof down at the finish area.
The fans here are, I would say, some of the best in the world. They love winter sports here in Oberhof, and it's always a great time.
27-year-old Johnny Gustafson. There again, you see very quick settles by these athletes. It's an entirely different ramp than some of the other ones we see around the world.
Johnny's having an okay run here. He's making some small corrections, but that was a lot smoother there. Spoke a little soon. He was a little too soon to curve 11, but overall, he's keeping it nice and clean and calm. He could relax a little bit more, but he'll have that confidence going to the second run and be able to really stretch back a bit more.
Trailing the pack by about 1/4 of a second right now. Johnny Gustafson opened the season with a career-tying best 5th place finish in Lillehammer, and he actually backed that up later that day with his podium finish in the mixed singles.
So he's just a little uncomfortable on the sled there. I mean, he needs to be because he had to make some small corrections. Very stretched back there out of 13th, but didn't quite get early enough to Kreisel, which there's so much pressure in the last curve on the track. You need to be viewers left, sliders right, coming down that straightaway.
Next, we have one of those athletes from a faraway continent, Alex Ferlazzo. The Australian turned a lot of heads last season, where he regularly broke into the top 15, sometimes the top 10. Off to a bit of a sluggish start this season, but coming off of his best result this year last week in Winterberg.
That's right, and he had, I believe, 5th place at World Championships last year.
That was unbelievable. It was so cool to see. Just a thousandth of a second up on the American at the last split, now falling behind.
He had a very similar transition there to Tucker. Not as smooth as I'd like to see from somebody who's really looking to make some headway and move up some spots into the seeded group.
So far, just about everyone's handled the exit of 13 okay. It's so funny how that works for different sleds from different start areas.
Different sleds from different start areas, and year to year or week to week, the way the curves are shaped, how much ice is on the entrance, how much ice is on the exit, can really change how easy it is, how difficult it is.
The speeds right there, 74.4 miles per hour. That's about 6-7 kilometers an hour faster than we saw yesterday with the women.
You see his right steel kind of bumped up onto the curve. We see ice shoot out the back of the sled. That's evidence of a skid, and that cost him some time.
It's been great to see the progress this season, just as we did last year with Ferlazzo, the breakout year.
Oh,
it's been great this year.
Happy Australia Day?
I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah, let's party. What I was going to say is, how about Svante and his sister? Team Sweden has really made a bit of a mark this year. Svante coming off of his win 2 days ago in Nations Cup. He's had a lot of good races this weekend, or this season.
Yes, he has. And I believe last year here in Oberhof was sort of a breakout race for Svante. He had, I don't have the results in front of me, but I know he was going very fast last year here in Oberhof. And he's backing that up this year in Oberhof. And I believe he was 13th place during the World Cup in December here. So he's definitely looking to improve upon that. And winning Nations Cup is a good showing that he's got a lot of potential to break into that top 12.
First ever win by Sweden on the World Cup in any of the World Cup divisions. He'll fall just behind Ferlazzo here, but still a good showing to be the second fastest among those Nations Cup qualifiers.
He had a pretty big mistake into the final curve of the track, the Kreisel, curve 14. He's lucky it's the last curve, but that could have been around a tenth of a second of a mistake.
And your research is pretty sound, Summer, because it was 13th place for Svante last month here.
I'd like to pretend I have an excellent memory, but I have the World Cup from December sitting in front of me.
Okay. I was going to say, you're not your three-man research team handing you sheets of paper.
See, here is where he makes the mistake. He's just a bit too soon there. Comes away from the entrance and skids into the curve.
There's the review from Koala. He and his sister will take part later today in mixed singles as a team of siblings. And we move into the seeded group. Kaspars Rinks, the first of three Latvians amongst those seeded athletes. He's 21 years old. Lives in the town of Ropaz, which is about 8 miles from the capital city of Riga. That same yell from that same coach with every Latvian sled.
I love it. I'm a big fan of the yelling at the start. You know, we're not golf. We can get some excitement and some cheering going. And
I agree. Top 20 in every race this year for Kaspars, except one where he finished 21st. His best result was a 10th in Altenburg.
And for someone so young, really athletes that are 21, 22 years old, they're just coming off the junior circuit. They're looking for consistency. They're looking to gain that confidence racing at the World Cup level. So to have a 10th place finish is incredible at that age.
Finished Kreisel to the finish line. Kaspars Rinks in 5th place. Not a huge surprise. As often as not, actually, the top Nations Cup qualifiers will put down some times in the 2-run race that hold at least until the second group of seeded athletes. Didn't look like a ton of authority in those paddles.
Very high there, but it worked out all right for him. Sort of hangs on the end of the curve there, uses the entire profile at the end of the curve.
Next up, we have the first of the Ukrainians, Anton Dukash, on a bit of a mini roll over the last couple of weeks. He finished 9th in Altenburg, a track he always does well on, and he backed that up in Winterberg, 8th place in the World Cup last weekend.
Maybe we'll see a 7th place today.
He did finish 7th at the World Championships last year in Altenburg.
He looks very relaxed on the sled, very comfortable. Really smooth transitions. This was one of the nicer runs we've seen so far. He looked very calm, very smooth. No skids anywhere, but 3/10 behind. I'm wondering if we're already seeing the ice start to deteriorate.
I was just about to ask you, Summer, because it's raining off and on. It's very humid, and that's a key ingredient in the sport of luge. And there are some tracks around the world that are entirely covered. This is not one of them. This is partially covered, right?
It's partially covered, but when they did the renovations a few years ago, you can kind of see some of the woodworking there. They sort of put like a larger shell of wood and metal, so the curves seem to have this really open feel, but they have an extra layer of protection.
Final race before the World Championships, scheduled for 2 weeks from now in Whistler, British Columbia, Canada. Here's the first of 4 Germans that will be making the trip overseas. Timon Grancagnolo. Timon, a young German at just 21 years old, but like Johnny Gustafson, he started off the season in Lillehammer with a terrific result, 4th place, his career best.
It's our first German sled down the hill, so I think we'll be hearing a lot of fans cheering as he goes by.
Are you suggesting that at 10:40 a.m. the Glühwein has already been flowing?
Probably, but I don't think these fans need it. They love to come up and support their athletes. We have a lot of ponchos keeping people dry in the stands at the finish.
Perfect exit. But is that what you want to do going into 14 into the Crosley? You want to bring that sled over to the right?
Yes, you want to be on sliders right, getting really early into the curve. There's so much pressure, and so it's really important to get right on that beginning radius and get onto the curve and catch that pressure to get a nice level line.
It's the second fastest speed we've seen so far in the race. Not surprisingly, Josef Ninnis put down the fastest clock at 75.1. But more importantly, it's a second place time behind Alex Ferlazzo.
That's right.
The team and Grancagnolo fan club, they came over from Saxony to cheer on their young German athlete. Over on the right there is Patrick Leitner in his first full season as the head coach of Team Germany, taking over from Norbert Bloch, who's in the house this weekend.
It's some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, Norbert had quite a resume over the years, as does this man. An Olympic medalist in singles, a World Cup overall champion in doubles, a world champion in singles, Wolfgang Kindl. He's had some injuries to his right shoulder over the past couple of weeks. 6th fastest start time for another guy, Summer, who can find his speed on the bottom half of the track.
And this is our first Austrian slider of the race, one of those who was 1 through 4, he was 4th place. So just off the podium behind 3 teammates. Last time they competed here in Oberhof.
He's been 4th in 3 races this year, 1 podium, 2nd place in Lillehammer. Opening up a big lead now.
And Wolfie is no stranger to speed and success on the World Cup Tour. He was one of the strong athletes for Team Austria before they sort of had this stretch of success in the last few seasons.
That's right. When he won that 2019 World Championship at home it was not entirely, but mainly a different lineup of athletes. The Glaciers were just starting out, Reini Ager. So Wolfie's been around for a long time, dating back to the Olympics in Whistler. I believe he told me, Summer, that he and Felix Locke began their World Cup careers on the same day. They've pretty much gone hand in hand for the last 16 years or so.
Maybe they're playing chicken of who's going to stay around longer.
Yeah, they got a long way to go to catch up to Ninnis.
He's only about 2/10 ahead of Alex Ferlazzo, and so, you know, I would have kind of expected to see a bit more speed out of the Austrians, so this may have been Alex had a phenomenal run, or the track is deteriorating, or the Austrians just don't have quite that same magic they had last time they raced here in Oberhof, but I think we'll see here with Jonas Müller.
Sure we will. Podiums in 3 of his last 4 races, including 2 victories. Yesterday, Jonas told me that this is a track he truly loves.
I think the Loving Oberhof sliding club is small but mighty. I'm also a big fan of Oberhof. It's, I think, one of the most fun tracks to slide on.
It's such an interesting point because, and we'll touch on it in a second, because we can see how Jonas does here, and he's struggling.
That's tough to see. He carried some pressure to the end of curve 13, and with how much pressure he had on the end of the curve, it really wanted to whip him off the curve into the wall. He did a very nice job correcting and minimizing that, but still, that's a massive mistake.
Very frustrated, as you can see. He's in 2nd place, but that had to have cost him a couple of tenths. I've met and talked to a lot of athletes, Summer, who say, well, let's check this out again, because we do want you to give us the proper analysis of what happened.
So here he comes, maybe a little late into curve 13. Sharp peak there. The sled comes up towards the woods at a steep angle, comes off the curve soon and back onto that last little radius. And you just see him fighting it and skidding and costing time. And you could see him realize his mistake and kind of put his head back in frustration before going into the final curve, because he knew he just cost himself. He cost himself the lead in this race so far.
Unfortunate. Yeah, what I was going to say is there are a lot of athletes I've talked to who say, I love Oberhof. I don't do too well in Oberhof, but I love it. And that says a lot about luge athletes trying to rise to a challenge of figuring out a question.
I mean, it is such a unique track. Being a luge-only track, and just the way the crew can shape the curves just for us, and some of them are built a little differently. The transitions are a little tighter. It is a different track, and that leads to needing a different setup than the way most other tracks are built. And so if you don't have that figured out and it's just not working for you, you can have the best runs of your life and you're not going to find speed.
David Glacier, 3rd place finish on the podium last month here in Oberhof.
He's having a bit of a rough run.
Yeah, he's going to lose that lead, and he does just now.
I'm impressed with how he minimized those mistakes, but they were mistakes. But he really did. I mean, we saw some of the same mistakes cost other people a bit more and have bigger skids. He stayed very calm and corrected them, but it was sort of small mistake after small mistake.
Austria took the last top 4 positions last month here. They hold the top 3 at the moment, but a couple of strong Germans still to come. How do you minimize those mistakes? As we pick up the replay after the start a little later on, it's a question of relaxation and small corrections, correct?
Yes, so very experience-based. You'll see sort of inexperienced sliders or younger athletes, when they make a mistake, they panic and they'll sit up in the sled. Their position will actually get less stable when they panic at making a mistake. So the more you can absorb it with your body and like very calmly make the correct steers needed, it's a matter of experience and comfort level, track to track and athlete to athlete.
The next 2 to come could not be any closer. Nico Gleicher and here Max Langenhahn. Both of them have won twice this season on the World Cup. Both of them have been on the podium in 5 out of 6 races. And both of them are tied exactly with 456 World Cup points. This is tight. This will be fun here.
And how exciting to have a tie in the World Cup overall this far into the season. It's, you know, it's normal the first few races, but this is the 7th World Cup.
Last year, Max had basically clinched by this race.
Max was he was untouchable from a distance even. He was so dominant last season.
here on his home track. Max Langenhahn out of 13, perfect.
Very smooth entrance to Kreisel.
That's making a statement, telling the Austrians, you are not going to sweep this weekend. We're not going to see many mistakes, Summer, in this slow-mo replay,
No.
which doesn't back up the point Max said earlier in the week, which it does actually what you were talking about earlier. He said you get punished more severely with even the smallest errors here in Oberhof.
That's right. A lot of height there, but such a nice smooth swing into curve 11. Very level height coming to the end of curve. Beautiful exit of curve 13. He's so stretched back, confident in his entrance. He could have been a little earlier to Kreisel, but I'm just looking for something to I'm looking for something to say. He could have done better.
Well, he's probably thinking the same thing. All of you perfectionists, you have the best run, and then all you think about is that one little glitch you had in curve 3 or something.
Absolutely. That's the sport. It's time to 1,000th of a second, so every tiny little thing matters.
Nico Gleicher top 7 in every race this year, 2 wins, 5 podiums. He finished 3rd last week in Winterberg, 2nd here in Oberhof last month. He's got his work cut out for him.
400ths behind. This next split will tell us if he's gaining or losing on Max, what we can expect from the rest of the run.
This is where the Austrian sleds have gotten fast over the last season,
Losing
but he's lost
quite a bit of time. I would say he's having a bit of a better run than his teammates, but losing time to Max just every split.
This will be a 2nd place time, but a distant 2nd place time, which is not exactly setting up a dramatic 2nd run, but we'll see how things shake out. Austria right now in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place, all behind Max Langenhahn. Not a lot in the way of mistakes, was there?
No, he had a really nice run. I do think he had a better run than his teammates, but he had a little bit of extra pressure out of Kreisel, but the finish line is right there, so that's a mistake that in the individual race doesn't matter so much, but he'll need to clean that up before the next event later with the touchpad being so far up the outrun.
Here is the 2nd of 3 Latvians in today's competition, Gins Bierziņš. Gins with 2 top 6 results this season. He had an 11th here in Oberhof last month.
He could be pushing his position a little bit more, I will say. I don't know if this is just the position he's more comfortable with or if he's not so comfortable in Oberhof, but he could be kind of stretching back into the sled and putting his head back a little more.
A little bit of a loop there in that straightaway. Can you loop in a straightaway, or is it veer? It's a veer, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we have a word for it other than just skidding back and forth.
Okay.
But looping, I guess, works.
Yeah, I guess I've always associated that to the high corners.
Yeah, because it normally, looping is when you hit a pressure and the pressure lifts you higher into the curve and then drops you lower when the pressure goes away, and you're not steering through those pressures to have an even line.
Exactly, as in one does not want to loop in S4 in Königssee.
No, you do not. He had some direction towards the right sliders right there, and when he went to correct, he didn't have that kind of calm experience of minimal correction. He overcorrected, which sent him into that skid sideways, and then he corrected from his correction, and that's why we see that back and forth skidding.
Double Olympic gold medalist Felix Locke getting ready at the top. Felix was very blunt, as he usually is, when he said that we need to improve here in Oberhof and catch up to the Austrians because we were not good last time we were here. Well, Max has already done his part. Let's see what Felix can do on a track where he has won many times in his career.
So far, a very smooth run, as you would expect from someone with so much experience here.
He's still behind a couple of the Austrians at the latest splits, but now picking up some.
is closer. I think Nico was a tenth behind at that point.
Battling Nico right now, it would seem, for second place, and he could have the advantage. He does. So it's Germany 1-2. That's exactly what they wanted, Summer. They needed to position themselves ahead of the Austrians early.
That's right. And it is, Max has quite a lead, but Felix is only 500ths ahead of Nico Gleicher.
A 52-time winner on the World Cup. Perhaps more impressively, Felix Locke with 7 World Cup overall seasons championships.
Really a little bit of a correction there. He had a little bit too much cross from curve 12, but minimized it without any skidding on the ice.
Max gets ready to head back to the top. Felix heads into the warming hut down below, and Christos Apriots grabs the handles at the top. 26-year-old from Sigulda. One podium this year on his home track in Sigulda, where he has also won on the World Cup in the past. At least through the seeded group, Summer, the track is holding based on those fast times we've seen in the last few.
I think so. I mean, again, I've been very impressed with the track conditions holding up this year in some really less than ideal conditions. And you can see it, that sheen you see to the ice. When that goes away all the way, that's when you know the ice is slowing down. But as long as there's some shine to the ice, these athletes have a chance. So he had a similar problem to his teammate there, but he corrected a little bit less. He didn't overcorrect and start the sled skidding back and forth. So we saw a similar exit of curve 13, but a better adjustment there.
Yeah, he went a little back and forth in that straightaway. Right now, Apriots back in 9th place. In each of the races yesterday, the women's singles and the men's doubles, Austria and Germany held 6 of the top 7 spots after the first run, and that is the case once again today in men's singles. In fact, they hold all of the top 6 positions, Germany and Austria, with only Alex Ferlazzo breaking up that group. Alex is in 7th. We still have one more, and a very formidable athlete here to conclude the seeded group. Italy's Dominic Fischnaller. Dominic, an Olympic bronze medalist. Earlier this season, a World Cup bronze in Altenburg. And he is a one-time World Cup overall champion in the points. His consistency paid off a couple of seasons ago.
That's right. Dominic is a great slider. He's having a bit of a harder time finding speed this year, but he did find the podium once, and he's definitely hoping to find it again. But Oberhof is a challenging track to do so. A little rough on curve 12, but generally pretty smooth. Ooh. It was almost too good there out of 13. He got over to the right side of the track just a bit soon, and it actually pushed him away from the entrance of Kreisel.
7th place time behind the Germans and the Austrians for Dominic Fischnaller. And a shout out to Dominic's fiancée, Emily, whom Summer, I guarantee, is up at 5 a.m. back in the U.S. watching him.
I don't know. Maybe she slept in. Maybe she said, I'll catch the replay. No, I'm kidding. She's probably watching. Hi, Emily.
In preparation, a little rest for Emily before the World Championships, the trip to Whistler.
Really nice exit there.
Still have another Italian coming up, or two more coming up in just a moment, Alex and Leon. But we segue into the other qualifying athletes with a young German. Incidentally, if you're wondering about David Nussler, who's a hometown athlete here, David got hurt a couple of weeks ago in Altenburg, is still out of action. So this is a World Cup debut, I believe, for this youngster, 19-year-old Marco Lega, who is a junior world champion. The pool of athletes is just unending for Germany.
How exciting to have your World Cup debut on a home track with so many fans to support you, but also it definitely adds a little bit of extra stress and pressure.
In fact, I believe Marco's the two-time defending world junior champion, so he's primed and ready.
He's having a nice run, good lines. He could push back on the sled a little bit more and get a little bit more of aerodynamics in his favor. He's pushing back there where it really counts in the straightaway. Aerodynamics are extra important in those long straightaways we see sometimes.
15th place could very well get him into run number 2. So that would be just an incredible achievement in his first World Cup race. So you're not going to see standings flash in front of you, but things will not change at the top. So just as a quick review for those who don't have your computers open, Max Langenhahn leading the way for Germany ahead of teammate Felix Lach. Then it is a quartet of Austrians, Nico Gleicher, Kindle, David Gleicher, and Müller in 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Dominic Fischnaller, Alex Ferlazzo, Timon Brancagnolo, and Christers Aperjods. That's the top 10.
He looks very happy. There's nothing like that first World Cup run in front of him.
Very exciting.
What a great crowd here to do it in front of as well.
28-year-old Mateusz Sokovic of Team Poland. He'll be teaming up with Klaudia Damaracka later today in mixed singles.
He's having a relatively smooth run here. Really nice transitions there. He looks very calm on the sled. A little high in the transition for 12 to 13, but so calm in the exit of 13. Really nice level Kreisel.
Crossing in 17th place out of the 19 who have made their way down. Poland is here every weekend. I love their attendance record. I'd love to see a little more depth in the Polish squad. Mattia is basically a one-man men's singles, Claudia one-man women's singles, and that's true in doubles as well. So one little injury from an athlete and they miss out on team relays.
Yeah, here we see a little too soon to 13, but he stays super calm. Great correction in 13 for a nice smooth arc. I think we saw the ice starting now to catch up just a little bit.
22-year-old Alex Gufla, a police officer out of Plat de Passier in northern Italy, southern Tyrol. This is teammate Leon Felder watches on in the background. Alex just missed out in the top 20 last week in Winterberg. He has 3 top 20 results this season, the best being 14th in Altenburg, Germany. Not too far from here.
I think he just bumped the wall a little bit before.
Right, I saw that.
I mean, it wasn't anything huge, but making mistakes so high up on the track, they just multiply because you're taking off momentum that's going to build you to a faster time. So the higher up on a track you make a mistake, the more detrimental it is. Really beautiful exit of curve 13 there.
20th place, sitting on the hot seat. That's the number we're going to look at more carefully for the rest of this run, more so than the top 5, because only the top 20 make it into run number 2. We still have a few good athletes to come, and that's not where he wanted to be. He wanted to have a little breathing room.
Absolutely. And now he's watching every sled after him, just hoping they come down a little bit behind him so he can get into that second run and hopefully move up a few spots.
24-year-old Leon Felderer has bounced back and forth between the seeded group and the qualifying group throughout the season. He has put down top 20, top 18 results, in fact, in every race this season. Like you, Summer, Leon is one of the athlete representatives to the executive board. In fact, he sits on the executive board of the International Luge Federation.
That's right. Leon does so much work for the athletes off the ice. It's a wonder he still has time to train and put together these good competitive runs. So we're all very lucky to have him. A little rough there in 8 to 9, 9 to 10. Hit some good corrections, but again, those curves are so important for building momentum. And any small little bump onto the curve, anytime you see ice spraying, that's a skid, and that is literally breaking the sled and causing more friction and slowing you down. So anytime ice shoots up in the back of the sled, that is not a good thing.
Sandra Robacher there had to pull out of the race yesterday as she rests for the World Championships, but she saw her teammate Leon Felderer pick up a little time down and below. Leon was staring at about an 18th or 19th place result. In the end, he's got a 14th place time and should safely be into run 2.
And honestly, with some of these turns, like right here, he actually pops his right runner off the ice with that transition. So to see him sitting in 14th place with those mistakes, he's got a real shot at moving up a few spots in the second run. He's happy.
Everyone's friend, Leon Felderer. He's through with run number 1. Marian Škupek of Slovakia now on course, or soon to be on course. We have a question coming in from Steve, who's watching and throws this onto the YouTube chat. He says, we mentioned the Nations Cup and how many sliders generally take part each week, and is there overall Nations Cup champion at the end of the season? So Steve, the answers to those questions, and Summer can back me up on this, is the number depends on how many athletes show up at each weekend's race, but there are only 13 spots available, or 17 to qualify. 18, there you go.
There's 12 seated athletes and 30 spots total.
Okay, there you go. So 18 spots available. We've seen as many as 40 athletes in some Nations Cup races. And yes, they do keep track of those Nations Cup points. And they do have a Nations Cup champion at the end of the season. Thanks for that question, Steve. 22nd place, short day for Marian Škupek, who I also don't believe will be taking part in the mixed singles later, as his teammate Josef Ninnis will actually pair up with Argentina's Veronica Ravenna in that competition.
Which is a really great feature of the mixed singles and doubles events. That's unique to the team relay, or what we previously had in the sprint, is athletes can team up from different nations to form a team. I think it's something really unique and cool that we have to give athletes from nations that don't have as much of a depth of field, or maybe only have one discipline here competing, to still compete and get those race experiences.
Totally agree. As you know, probably on some of the races we've called together, I've long been an advocate. Hey, there's Norbert Lockenhaus. I've been an advocate of why not mix it up in team relay as well, as if you've got some athletes hanging out that don't have a full team and you can field one. I mean, that's my opinion, but probably a lot of liability, as Andre Monzi has trouble right there at the start ramp.
Yeah, he had a little bit of crooked direction, not going straight down the ramp. I'm not sure if that came from his pull or his paddles were a little bit off. And then he went to correct the other way with his paddles, so he did not have a lot of forward momentum going into curve 1 there. Very late to the curve there. Ooh, big skid. It's tough when you make a mistake at the start or really early on the track. It can be really challenging to get that out of your head and refocus and put together a fantastic run. It can sour it right from the start. But sometimes you'll see an athlete make a mistake at the start and have the best run of their lives because they think, okay, it doesn't matter now. I can just lay back. I've got nothing to lose.
That's right, and it was somewhat comfortable down below, but the problem started, you just saw a thumbs down from Andre Munzing. He will race later on today, either with Juliana or Olina, so that will be good. And of course, Summer, he's got a podium he can take away from this season in Team Relay.
That's right. A little high there.
Well, Johnny Gustafson of the USA still sits in the hot seat in 20th place, and his teammate will now try to knock him out. Hunter Harris, the last of the Americans to go. Incidentally, a 4th American, Aiden Bueller, just missed out qualifying for the World Cup. I believe just missing by 1 position for the 2nd week in a row.
I think Aiden competed last week, I believe.
But this is 22-year-old Hunter Harris. He's had off and on World Cup action over the last 2 seasons.
He's having a really nice run. He could have been a little earlier to 8, but that's okay. Too early to 9. Let's see how he handles it. A little late to 10. He's having a few mistakes, but until that one, he was doing a good job minimizing them. He is staying really calm. He's made some major improvements this year, which has been really great to see as a teammate when you see your teammates develop their skills as a slider, but he will not get a 2nd run, unfortunately. But he had some really great moments in that run, but a lot to improve upon as well.
So Hunter can pack that sled away and get ready for the World Championship in 2 weeks in Canada. So as we check out the slow-mo, you said a little early, a lot, Summer. So what causes someone to be a little
so
early?
high there on the end of the curve, which you can see the height on the end of curve 10 sort of swings you too early to 11. You want to be early to 11, but when you're so early that you're hitting the wall like we saw Hunter do, that's too much. And that costs a lot of time. And then we see a skid here into curve 12. Anytime the ice is spraying and the sled is skidding, it's not good.
25-year-old Seiya Kobayashi, another one-man national team at the moment. Seiya out of Japan, and if I'm not mistaken, Summer travels and trains with all of you.
That's right. Ooh, he had a little bit of strange direction on the start there as well. Seiya is Team Japan is teamed up with Team USA through the partnership program, so he is our teammate, and he's great to have around. And I'm really hoping he puts out a good run right here.
On his biography, he lists as his favorite luge athlete in the world, Dominic Fischneller. Good one to emulate.
He's having a pretty decent run. A really smooth exit there. I'm just not sure if it'll be enough to get him into that top 20.
Skidding across the finish in 24th place. We may be at that time where Johnny's position could be safe based on the condition and the rest of the field. Anything can still happen with a Canadian, another Romanian, another Italian still to come.
That's right. When you're in that position on the bubble, you're watching every sled. Fingers crossed.
Red light, please explain.
So that button that the athletes press at the finish is the control box. When it's green, you don't have to get additional controls. If it's red, your weight and equipment gets checked. And if it's red and blue, your weight and equipment gets checked, and your sled gets actually taken apart after the second run to have an extra thorough check. So they'll put stickers over some of your bolts so you can't go and change anything in between runs, and then hold the sled after the race and really take it apart and go through the rules point by point.
20-year-old Dylan Morse, the lone Canadian in today's qualifying race.
He did hit a wall there before curve 6, so I don't think we're going to see, I think we'll see that time kind of lead away throughout the run.
Dylan qualified on Friday. His teammate Theo Downey just missed out on making it into the World Cup race. Ooh, making it exciting start to finish. Now skidding in the Kreisel.
So those were some pretty big hits and huge skid into Kreisel.
The result being that his place at the moment matches his bib number, which of course you don't want to see in run number 1.
You do not want to see that. So here we have the wall hit before curve 6. That's high up on the track. A little bit of a loop here in the curve from that hit. And then here we'll see too much direction, hits the wall, seems like it's going to correct and go straight, but just takes so much direction over to the left, huge skid into the Kreisel.
Great athleticism. Who says lugers aren't athletes? I mean, you do all you can just to avoid bigger damage, and that was a good display. We'll see Dylan and Theo a little later on today in mixed singles, along with Trinity Ellis and Caitlin Nash. Next up from Ukraine, Daniil Martinovsky, a 20-year-old, first season on the World Cup. And we stand, or more specifically, I stand corrected, because earlier summer I said that only 2 nations, Austria and Germany, were on the podium last weekend, yesterday, and of course Switzerland. Natalie Mogg was on the podium as
That's
well.
right.
I was corrected by none other than our authority, Ashley Farquharson, watching.
I should have known that. Sorry, Natalie. I was in that race. Yeah, fantastic race from Natalie yesterday. She's been showing great speed all season, so she's definitely very excited to be back on the podium.
Her smile at the finish was awesome.
And Daniil Martinovsky.
1.35 behind for Martinovsky, and we still have 2 Romanians and an Italian to come down. But Johnny Gustafson probably breathing a little easier, as not only will he likely get into the second run, but he'll be the first to go after they've cleared this track of all of its snow and ice debris.
That's right. And he was 3rd off in the first run, so he did have, the opportunity of the good ice. But
mistakes got in the way.
Mistakes get in the way, and that's racing. It right. Wouldn't be exciting if everyone had perfect runs all the time.
And of course, Summer, you're rooting for him to gain his confidence back and have a really clean run, because it's likely he will be your partner later today.
It is, and I have full faith he's going to have a fantastic run later.
Valentin Cretu has a quote that I just love about this sport of luge. He says he loves the athletes. I mean, he loves the sport, but he loves the people that are in this game. They're all unique in the sport of luge, and they all have a great fighting spirit. And that does speak volumes, Summer, because it's not just fighting to win races. It's fighting to keep the sport respectable and for people to understand it. It's just, I don't know why it hits me so hard.
That's a great quote. I mean, you definitely have you have to have a lot of fight to want to throw yourself 75, 80 miles per hour down an ice track in freezing cold temperatures. You're not a very calm person if that's what you want to do in your free time. So we have a lot of really fantastic athletes competing here in luge.
Valley done for the day, as unfortunately Romania has no women athletes, at least at the moment, put forth in team relay nor mixed singles and mixed doubles. I'm not sure if we're going to, well, no, I stand corrected. In doubles, they do, right? I'm totally off on that because Karina will be racing a little later today. I think I was mixing them up with Slovakia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do have, I believe, a team.
Yeah, Raluca.
Valentine's another very experienced athlete here in this field. Not quite as experienced as Josef Nines, but he's been around competing for a very long time.
Yeah, he's in that group with Wolfie and Felix that all began their careers just before the Vancouver Olympics. Bib number 29 out of 30, Lucas Pecci, 20 years old from Bruneck, Italy, as they hope to host the sliding sports next year at the 2026 Winter Olympic Games as construction continues in Cortina. No one top 20 this season so far for Lucas, and that was last week, 16th place.
And that's definitely his aim today. He wants to get, with this later bib, 29, he's really probably just trying to get into that second run.
The track just is not allowing that. He's 25th at the last
really nice run, and he really pushed his position out of curve 13 there. Very oof.
He was making a little move down below. Not sure why Sandra liked that so much. We've got one more to come still, Eddie Krejcian. That's the fighting spirit of an athlete, getting up after a rough run and acknowledging the spectators.
Here we see a lot of pressure in Kreisel. Huge hit, but almost bounces him over the finish line.
Italy done here in run number one more remaining. A Romanian ready at the top, Eddie Krejcian, and I can't let you get away, Summer, without getting your take on it. Obviously, this construction in Cortina, it would be great from an Olympic spirit standpoint for everyone to be in Italy. If that track isn't ready, the Olympics would be on your home track in Lake Placid. You've got to have a little bit of a mixed opinion about that, don't you?
I think you're trying to get me in trouble, Tim.
Well, or at least give us the patented PR response, the PC response.
Well, from what I've heard, everything is on track for homologation in March in Cortina.
Who will be part of that homologation? How do they decide what athletes get to check it out?
So they pick one athlete from each discipline from within 3 different ranking brackets. And I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something like 1 through 10 or 1 through 8. So one athlete in women's singles that's ranked in the top 8, one athlete that's ranked 9 through 15. I don't know if these are the right numbers, but this is the system. And one athlete ranked like 16 to 30. And they do that for each of the disciplines. So 3 athletes per discipline, or 3 sleds per discipline, I should say. And beyond that, I think it's sort of half random, half involvement from the national federations. They can put forward a suggestion of who they'd like to send. So,
and it's very systematic. Unlike afterwards, next fall, all of you will travel there for an international training week.
Yes. So, then everyone will have an opportunity on the ice. But there is a huge advantage to homologating the track. You're getting on the ice so much sooner. You're the first to get on there. I've heard it's a really cool experience, very collaborative. All the coaches that travel working together, all the athletes from different countries really working together to find those lines for the rest of the athletes and the rest of the tour to navigate the track safely at that first training week.
Germany in the top 2 spots, followed by a quartet of Austrians. For Lazo on his way to his best result of the season, Svante Koala just out of the top 10. This could be one of his best career results. And counting them all the way down to Johnny Gustafsson, who finished 20th last weekend, sits in position number 20 this weekend and will start things off. in run number 2. So that second and final run, we will be back on the air at 11:50 local time, which is exactly 25 minutes away. So grab your second cup of coffee of the morning. Don't go too far away. Summer and I will be right back here in Oberhof for run number 2 of men's singles as the EBERSPA FIL Luge World Cup continues.